Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today's presentation entitled Focus on Fiber, a Consumer Perspective. I'm Amanda Gonzalez, ASB's Membership Manager and your moderator for today's event. Before we get started, I want to review a few housekeeping items and let you know how you can participate in today's webinar. We are looking at an example of the GoToWebinar attendee interface, which is made up of two parts. The viewer window on the left, which allows you to see everything the presenter will share on their screen, and the control panel at the right. Within that control panel is how you can participate in today's event. So let's look at that. By clicking the orange arrow, you can open and close your control panel. From the View menu, you can also set the control panel not to auto-hide when inactive if you prefer to keep it open. The audio pane provides audio information. By default, you have joined the webinar via mic and speakers. Click Audio Setup to select your computer speakers or headset device. If you prefer, you can join the audio via telephone by selecting Use Telephone, and the dial-in information will be displayed, including an audio pin. During the presentation, you have the ability to send questions to our webinar staff through the Questions pane. Simply type in your question and click Send. At the end of the presentation, we will do a question and answer session to answer as many questions as we have time for. As a final reminder, today's webinar is being recorded and will be posted to the ASB website's webinar page. Now I'd like to introduce today's speakers, Janelle Crawford and Kathy Dorco. Janelle is an Industry Marketing Manager for DuPont de Nisco Food Ingredients. In this role, she is responsible for developing and implementing DuPont's market strategy, research, and advertising initiatives for various industries within food ingredients. Her background includes consumer and business marketing and market research with both client and supplier sides of the restaurant, retail, and telecommunication industries. Janelle has a BS degree in Business Administration and Business Administration and Marketing from the University of Kansas and an MBA from Mid-America Nazarene University. Kathy Dorco is a product manager for functional sweeteners, fibers, and prebiotics for DuPont de Nisco Food Ingredients. Her background includes product and industry management, technical service support for antioxidants, antimicrobials, emulsifiers, fibers, and sweeteners, and product development for jams, jellies, and ice cream toppings. Kathy has a BS in Nutrition Food Science and an MS in Food Science Technology, both from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. Janelle, I now pass the presentation on to you.
Thank you, Amanda. Today I'd like to start by walking you through the agenda for our webinar. First, we'll begin with a section that defines fiber and outlines today's fiber market to make sure we're all on the same page. Kathy is going to cover this section. Then I'll introduce the consumer research that was conducted and spend a majority of the time discussing the results of the study, including where consumers look for information about the foods they purchase and what the key buying criteria are when making these decisions. Specific to fiber, I'll cover the importance consumers place on fiber and their awareness and knowledge, or lack thereof, regarding the different sources of fiber used in fiber-fortified foods and beverages. Then we'll conclude with some time for questions. First, let's begin with a polling question for the audience. Then I'll pass it off to Kathy to begin our presentation with an overview of today's fiber market. Okay, so for the first polling question, it'll come up on your screen in just a moment. What you're going to do here is indicate your involvement with formulating and/or manufacturing fiber-fortified foods and beverages. So the options you could check would be extremely involved, somewhat involved, not very involved, or not at all involved. So go ahead and make your selection now. Okay, so these are just the responses that were included from everyone who answered. So thank you for taking the time to doing that. Looks like a lot of you have quite a bit of involvement in manufacturing or formulating fiber-fortified foods and beverages. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll pass it off to Kathy when we get back to our screen.
Okay, thank you, Janelle. Very simply, fiber is a type of carbohydrate that the body cannot digest. It is the edible parts of plants or analogous carbohydrates that are resistant to digestion and absorption in the human small intestine, but they will partially or completely ferment in the large intestine. There are many methods for fiber analysis, but a general technical definition would include carbohydrate polymers with 3 or more monomeric units, which are neither digested nor absorbed in the human small intestine and belong to one of the following categories. They're either naturally occurring in the food as consumed, an example would be the fiber in fruits and vegetables, or they're extracted from food, such as inulin or chicory root extract, or they're synthesized carbohydrate polymers, such as polydextrose. However, they may come from naturally occurring ingredients. It's important to note that fibers in all these 3 categories, including the last 2, should be able to demonstrate beneficial physiological effects. It is widely recognized that the consumption of the recommended daily intake of fiber has been linked with a number of health benefits, including reduction of constipation, hypertension, the prevalence of obesity, reduced growth of intestinal pathogens, reduced rates of heart disease and cancer and diabetes. There are 2 forms of fiber, soluble and insoluble fiber. Insoluble fiber does not dissolve in water, so it increases the movement of material through the digestive tract and increases stool bulk. Sources of insoluble fiber are whole wheat foods, bran, nuts, seeds, and the skin of some fruits and vegetables. Insoluble fiber provides bulking and tends to make the stools looser, so it might be problematic for people with diarrhea. Soluble fiber partially dissolves in water to form a gel-like substance. Sources of soluble fiber include oats, legumes such as beans, peas, and soybeans, fruit, barley, some vegetables, psyllium, inulin, polydextrose, and resistant starches and maltodextrin. Soluble fiber is helpful for people who are experiencing diarrhea or constipation from irritable bowel syndrome or IBS. This slide illustrates the excellent level of recognition for fiber and the link to digestive health among different segments of the population. It is clear from this research that the importance of fiber in the diet is widely acknowledged not only by those with a self-expressed interest in digestive health, but also by the population as a whole. The recommended daily intake, or RDI, for fiber vary globally, but they're typically in the range of 25 to 38 grams per day for healthy adults. However, the average daily intake of fiber is reportedly only in the range of 50 to 20 grams per day, indicating that there is a significant shortfall of fiber in the average diet. So the question then becomes, if recognition of the benefits of fiber is so high, then why is average consumption of fiber almost half of the recommended daily intake? Janelle will cover this question and answers in more detail later. This next slide shows a number of examples of products currently on the market fortified with fiber. On the far left are the products from the market leaders, General Mills and Kellogg's. Both companies in this example are using consumer awareness and desire for more fiber to promote these products. This strategy has been a huge success. To the far right, Target is a success story for dietary supplements. They are also using consumer awareness and desire for more fiber to promote the supplements. In the center of the slide, you can see a cereal bar, cereal, and bread using fiber and prebiotics to boost the digestive health profile. As you can see in this graph, the number of fiber claims and new product launches has significantly increased in the past decade in a number of food categories. Inulin, polydextrose, and phos or fructooligosaccharides are the most popular fiber ingredients used in these products to enhance the level of soluble fiber. Each bar in the graph represents a year, beginning with 1997, and you can see there were less than 20 launches that year with a fiber claim. 10 years later, in 2007, there were nearly 700 launches with a fiber claim. Each color in the bars represent a different product category, and you can see there have been up to 10 different product categories launched in a year. Breakfast cereals, bakery, and snacks typically represented over half of the launches annually with a fiber claim. Please note that the significantly reduced number of launches shown for 2009 and 2010 do not reflect a decline in products with a fiber claim per se, but rather it reflects the decline in the total overall number of product launches by food and beverage manufacturers. You can see that the number of launches increased again significantly in 2011 to over 600 launches by just the beginning of October of 2011. Now that we have reviewed the definition and types of fiber, as well as the digestive health trends and dramatic number of food and beverage launches in the past 10+ years, it is clear that consumers are interested in increasing fiber intake. To better understand how the consumer perceives and understands fiber and the trends, Danisco commissioned independent consumer research. I will now turn the presentation back to Janelle to review this very insightful and, at times, surprising study.
Great, thanks Kathy. Let's dive into the consumer's perception of fiber. I'm going to begin with the goals of the research that was conducted. First, we sought to verify the importance of fiber to consumers as compared to other health benefits that can be offered through food or beverage. We also wanted to understand how consumers perceive or categorize fibers used in the fortification of these foods and beverages. To get this information, the study centered around food label reading habits and the key drivers behind food purchases. And finally, the awareness, knowledge, and perception of fibers available today on the market. As with any research results, it's important to cover the methodology of the study briefly to understand the context behind the conclusions that were made and to reinforce its validity. This was a quantitative online survey with a representative sample of consumer respondents in both the United States and France. While the same study was completed in both countries, today we'll focus on the results for the U.S. respondents. However, in general, the findings were really quite similar between the two populations. I'll point out that the respondents were screened such that there was a spread of age, income, education, and working status, and only included those who were involved in the grocery shopping for their household. Also, no one with a specific or restrictive diet was included. Finally, it's important to note that third-party sources were used to help validate the methodology and execute the study. An independent global market research firm actually conducted the study and analyzed the results. And we brought in a major global food manufacturer, quite involved in the fiber category, to assist with the study's design and survey content as an extra way to help ensure it was as unbiased as possible. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the results. First, where do consumers get the information they're looking for about food products? Consumers look first to the front of a food or beverages package for product information, seen here by the bar on the left of 76%, which is significantly higher than all other sources of obtaining information. This is followed by just over half of respondents who say they look at the nutrition facts or ingredient list. However, Follow-up questions clarified that consumers are referencing the nutrition facts and/or ingredient lists only when it looks like something about the product has changed, or if they're making direct comparisons between two like products, not with each purchase or with routine and repeat purchases in the grocery store. So consumers are more focused on the part of the package that's visible on the shelf and not as focused on the ingredient statements where the source of fiber would be labeled. So what are the key buying criteria for consumers in the United States? To answer that question, respondents were given a list of several criteria that can be associated with products they eat and drink, such as the way it tastes, how convenient the product is, or whether or not it has additives or preservatives. The criteria are listed here from left to right in order of importance. The top 5 criteria ended up being taste, freshness, value for the money, nutritious or good for health, and convenience. So you'll see here 90% of consumers agree that how a product tastes is considered highly important or mandatory when buying food. Separately, a recent IFIC survey also confirms that taste is the top consideration, followed by price, healthfulness, and convenience, 4 out of the top 5 just mentioned above in the chart. How important is natural, and how does the desire for natural compare to other key wants or desires of consumers? This is the same chart shown on the previous slide, but now with statistical testing applied. Natural, shown in the red box, is significantly less important to consumers than the top 5 criteria mentioned before, and is now shown with the purple circles around their scores. This still recognizes that there is a desire in place for natural products, but it helps to put it into perspective among all of the things that consumers consider when making choices about the food they purchase for themselves and their families. Again, a reference back to the IFIC Foundation, where one of their executives explains that while Americans will almost always choose food that tastes good first, they're certainly looking for affordable, healthful solutions as well. Let's take another brief pause to complete the second polling question. So Amanda's going to get that up on the screen for us. What we're going to be answering is, if applicable to you, what is the level of overall emphasis your company puts on developing natural products? So the responses of your company places a strong emphasis across all categories or segments, a strong emphasis in some categories more than others, moderate emphasis across all categories, moderate emphasis in some categories more than others, or that there's really no current emphasis on natural products.
All right, and we're going to give the attendees a moment to answer the poll. I do have some attendees still submitting their questions, so a few more moments.
Okay, no problem.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now. I do apologize. I don't know why we're having such technical difficulties today. This is my fault and really unacceptable. Again, I do apologize. All right.
No problem, Amanda.
It's technology. I'm going to go ahead and share the poll now. Everybody should be
great.
seeing the results.
Yeah, so really it looks like there's kind of a mixed emphasis on natural products within the various organizations represented here today. So that's great. Thanks for your responses. Let's go ahead and pop back to the presentation. Okay. There we go. All right. Okay, so next I'd like to transition from the discussion about the bigger picture criteria like taste, freshness, and value to fiber specifically. Is fiber important to consumers, and is it on their radar? Yes, fiber is certainly on the radar of today's consumer, like I think we're all aware. In fact, when combining it with many other types of product claims that can be found on a food or beverage product, high fiber is one of the top 3 product claims desired by consumers. So you see that here in the red bar, or red box. Digestive health and regularity and weight management, 2 other important claims, are also achieved through fiber fortification. And it's possible to incorporate a fiber source that's also low in sugar and suitable for low-calorie products as well. Other criteria listed here on the chart. Other outside studies are referenced here just briefly that support the idea of fiber being associated with digestive health, which is a top trend affecting many Americans. But are consumers doing enough personally to address this top trend? No, unfortunately they're not. There's a large percentage of people who are not getting enough fiber in their daily diets. Over half think they don't get enough or do not know if they're getting enough fiber, as represented by the gold, green, and gray pieces of the pie, which total 55%. And only 12%, the blue piece, claim they are indeed consuming enough fiber every day. These 2 charts address consumers' knowledge of actually how much fiber, depending on gender, is recommended to consume in a day. There's definitely an overall lack of knowledge about how much daily fiber one should consume, as almost 3 out of 4 claim they don't know, and only 16% of females and only 7% of males selected the correct answer, which varies by gender and is noted by the red stars. Taken together with the previous slide, where 55% of respondents feel they do not consume enough fiber, it's clear that although consumers know fiber is important and beneficial for their health, they do not necessarily know how much they really need, how much they're actually consuming, and what sources of fiber to look for. So in summary of the past couple of slides, fiber is important to U.S. consumers, and it's listed in the top 3 buying criteria. Consumers have a general feeling they're not getting enough fiber in their daily diets, but lack knowledge on how much fiber that should be, and as we'll address next, also have a lack of knowledge about the ingredients used to fortify food and beverage products. So what do consumers know, or don't they know, about fiber sources used in fiber fortification? Before we dig into the details, let's pause once again for the final polling question. Perfect. Okay. So if applicable to you, what is the main fiber source your company uses in food products? And of course, this is an abbreviated list, but it does encompass several of the options. So go ahead and select which source or sources or the other option that you and your company use in your products, please.
We're still getting in some votes, so we're going to give it another second or so.
Okay.
All right, I am going to go ahead and now close the poll. I do not know what's going on every time I close a poll.
It's okay.
Ah.
You know what, Amanda? Don't worry. We can just go. We can go ahead and go on.
Yeah, let's just go on with that.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for your input. We're gonna flip to the next slide, moving ahead to ingredient awareness. So, among a long list of various ingredients used in fiber-fortified products, consumers tend to recognize the grains: wheat bran, corn bran, and soluble corn fiber the most. Sucrose, just as a note, was included here really more as a control or a reference point. So these 4 ingredients are shown on the chart inside the red box to the left, and these have the higher awareness scores. The same chart now appears with the statistical testing applied versus polydextrose and chicory root extract showing up in the middle there. Again, the 4 ingredients highlighted in the previous slide are not surprisingly statistically higher in awareness than all others. while in general, consumers have quite a low recognition of the various soluble fiber sources, particularly if you look at the top, or kind of that gray color section of each bar, which represents the percent reporting that they have strong awareness versus just somewhat aware. Everything shown from polydextrose on to the right is just at 4% strongly aware or less, so quite a low awareness of these soluble fiber ingredients. Moving from awareness to actual knowledge. We just discussed the generally low aided awareness, but even if respondents reported they were aware of the ingredient, do they actually know it to be a fiber? The answer is that outside of the greens, consumers don't associate these ingredients as sources of fiber. For example, there were a couple of focus groups that were done to prepare for the study. People were asked, just like they were here in the online survey, to classify ingredients into the appropriate category. And their lack of knowledge led them to start trying to make whatever logical association they could in order to answer the question. So for example, inulin, which is a fiber, to the average consumer was unknown really at all as a food ingredient, but it sounded like the word insulin, therefore they just guessed it to be a sugar. So likewise, as consumers in this quantitative study didn't classify most fibers as fiber, what was it that they thought these ingredients might be? I know there's a lot on this slide, but I'll kind of walk you through it. It turns out that generally they just don't know. So with this question, respondents were asked to classify each ingredient into one of 6 categories. Sugar, sweetener, which is dark gray. Fiber, which kind of shows up as the red piece. Color or flavor, dark brown. Bulking agent, green. Preservative, which is gold part. Vitamin mineral, which is orange. And then there was also a do not know option, which is the lighter gray. Now, I'm going to make a note here that for some reason I can't get this polydextrose pie chart to show up correctly. So I apologize that the colors, all the colors that you see are just the light gray and the brown. But what you see across the slide are 4 of the fiber examples. Like I said, polydextrose, inulin, chicory root extract, and resistant maltodextrin. But the data is similar for all of the fibers with low awareness. What you will notice is that that lighter gray bar representing the percentage that didn't even try to guess at what the ingredient might be, when given the list of categories, those saying do not know ranged anywhere from 44% with polydextrose up to 71% do not know with inulin. Then with polydextrose specifically, there was a large misclassification as a sugar. So that's actually the 42% that you see on the chart is the percentage of people saying that they thought polydextrose was a sugar. Inulin respondents also assumed sugar, while resistant maltodextrin was a little less clear, either sugar, bulking agent, or preservative. Chicory root extract is a bit different, and I think it's driven by the word extract. Again, when unfamiliar, consumers search for any kind of a link they can make, and this word lends itself towards color or flavor, as seen by 22% classifying it in this way. But regardless of the specific percentages shown here, the point is that when and if consumers actually examine the ingredient list, they're not identifying the actual source of fiber as such. So that really opens the door for manufacturers to look at finding the best fiber, rather than perhaps the one they think will be best accepted by consumers of their products. Finally, I'd like to point out how consumers feel who eat fiber-fortified products. Not surprisingly, the 3 bars on the left show the association of fiber with positive effects. Improved digestive health and regularity at 60%, satiety with a 48% of people associating fiber with that characteristic, and sense of wellness at 29%. However, the bars to the right of the line show that negative side effects are also associated with eating fiber foods. 25% experienced too much gas, 15% reported feeling bloated, and etc. Altogether, a third of consumers report experiencing at least one negative side effect when they eat fiber-containing foods. So this really brings up a point that manufacturers often miss. It's the importance of choosing a fiber that's well tolerated. These negative side effects, if experienced on a consistent basis, can quickly lead consumers away from the same products they seek for those positive effects. And we all know how long it can take to win back a lost customer, if they even come back at all. So what are the differences in toleration among the various fiber ingredients? This chart from an outside source and study shows the laxative threshold of 7 different ingredients, fiber ingredients. The red bar on the left represents the single serving toleration in grams, where the brown bar on the right is the toleration of the daily dose of that ingredient, which we discussed earlier as being anywhere from about 20 to 40 grams depending on gender in terms of the recommended daily intake. Polydextrose on the far left has an exceptional toleration, both for the single serving and the daily dose. So just in theory, if you look at this chart, a consumer could get their entire recommended daily intake of fiber and then some from just one serving of a product that contained polydextrose as the fiber source, because the single serving threshold is so high. So again, that's in theory, but that's how you can extract the information on this chart. However, ingredients like FOS, inulin, and resistant maltodextrin have 1/5 the toleration of polydextrose in a single serving, and nearly the same difference when considering a daily dose. So there are differences in toleration among the various fiber sources, and manufacturers should really be thinking about this as well when formulating products, in addition to the impact fiber can have on things such as taste, freshness, price, etc. of the food or beverage. Again, this is another outside study or source showing the fermentation rate of some fibers, which is the chart on the left, and the production of hydrogen gas, which is the chart on the right. I know the quality of the images is not ideal, but what you're seeing is just kind of a re-emphasis in the difference in toleration of the different fibers. So some fibers tend to ferment quite a bit faster than others, which leads to that really undesirable gas production in the body that no one is looking for. With that, I'm going to move ahead to the conclusion of the research and presentation and leave you with some key thoughts to take back to your business. Okay. So high fiber, as we've talked about, is one of the top 3 product claims important to consumers when shopping for food, and it's the most recognized ingredient for improving digestive health. Consumers get key product information from front of packaging first and are not focused on the ingredient statements where fiber types are labeled. Consumers do not recognize differences in soluble fiber sources, so really all soluble fibers could be viable alternatives in formulations for fiber-fortified foods and beverages from the standpoint of consumer awareness. And then finally, fiber is associated with both positive and negative effects on the body, and 1/3 of all respondents reported at least one negative side effect associated with consuming fiber-enriched foods and beverages. So again, just raising the importance of choosing a soluble fiber with a slow fermentation rate and low gas production to avoid consumer issues with those finished goods. And then again, just in conclusion, the survey results emphasize the importance of choosing the best fiber when fortifying foods, and the best can mean many different things. To consumers, all fibers may be perceived as being created equal, but manufacturers should really look to maximize taste, profitability, health benefit, and convenience while minimizing negative effects like gas and bloating. So that's the end of our presentation material. On behalf of Kathy and myself, I just want to thank you again for the time you've taken. And I'm going to pass it back to Amanda who will facilitate a Q&A session.
I do apologize. I have been having technical difficulties, and so I just have to come out real quick and then go back. Sorry about that, everyone. All right. We are now in the question and answer session, which is being opened up. I'll be reading the questions aloud to our speakers, who will then be responding. And please remember, you can issue your questions in the text box. We'll give it a few more minutes in case anybody does have any questions. All right.
And Amanda, I'll just make one
Go ahead,
brief
Gina.
comment here that if there are any questions that come up after the fact, feel free to contact us through Amanda, and we'd be happy to follow up offline or after the fact as well.
Absolutely, yes. In the next slide, I am going to be giving my contact information. Oh, wait a minute. I do have a couple of, I have a question for you. Mark Floric asks, source of the daily doses and single source tolerance. Mark, could you clarify that? Or
Sure. Let me, I think one thing that can happen on some people's slides is that the actual very bottom of the slide was cut off, and each of the slides does have a source at the bottom, so I'm going to flip back in my own notes to those external sources. The one with the laxative threshold that had the, I think, 7 different ingredients, the source was a 2006 publication from Blackwell Publishing. It was a Sweeteners and Sugar Alternatives in Food Technology article written in that publication by Ed Mitchell.
okay.
So that was the source of that study, and the other study was taken, I think, from a textbook in 1999. I apologize, I can't pronounce the name of it, but the sources are on the bottom of the slides if you reference those after the fact in the archive.
Okay, excellent. And I have another question from Joseph Guido. He wants to know, what is soluble corn fiber? Janelle or Kathy, one of you want to take that question?
Yeah, soluble corn fiber, and I can re-verify this, but this is the corn fiber that's extracted from corn sources.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions? If you do, please put it in the question text box. All right, I do have another question for you and Janelle. Duncan Fader wants to know, is polydextrose an additive? If so, what are the usage limits?
There's no maximum usage level per se. However, as far as using polydextrose in a product, depends on the product application, that there might be a maximum level depending on what level of fiber you're trying to achieve. So just from a functional standpoint, you might be able to add a maximum amount. But we could help you with that if you would like to contact Danisco salesperson, and we can help with the technical.
Well, I'd be more than happy to put Duncan in contact with you, Kathy. Not a problem.
Sure.
Are there any other questions for Janelle or Kathy? If not, we are going to conclude the webinar. So thank you everyone for attending. I do apologize again about the technical difficulties. Sometimes they can't be avoided. However, we have completed the question and answer session, and so I want to thank Janelle and Kathy for such a wonderful and insightful presentation. If you do have additional questions after the presentation, please feel free to contact me. My information is on the screen, 1-800-713-0462, extension 3, or at agonzalez@asbe.org, and I would be more than happy to put you in contact, as I said, with Janelle or Kathy. Oh, Duncan Fader does want to know if we're going to get the results from the last poll. I'm more than happy to set that up for you. Let me go ahead and share if that's all right with you, Janelle and Kathy.
Yeah, of course, that's fine.
Absolutely.
All right, let me go and share that, the very last poll. And these were the results.
Okay, yeah, so kind of a variety of different options, as well as either others that aren't listed here, perhaps just don't know, or another type of source, since there are so many sources. But thank you, Amanda, for putting that up.
Not a problem. And thank you, Janelle and Kathy. It looks as if we're at the end of our questions and answers, so we're going to go ahead and conclude this webinar for today. And thank you, everyone, for attending. I'm now going to be closing the webinar.